stop sharing this now and tell you a little bit about our presenters. So we are so fortunate to have Megan Matthews and Carolyn Cole with us today. Megan Matthews is the Assistant Director of Shared Power Design with the Office of Equity, pursuing equity and justice for all Washingtonians. She is committed to a lifelong journey of pursuing and living the values of equity and justice. Megan earned her master's degree in public administration from the Evergreen State College. She is certified as a pro-sci change management practitioner, a diversity professional, and a diversity executive. Carolyn Cole has been a leader in equity, access, and belonging work for over 10 years. She currently serves as Assistant Director, Equity, Access, and Belonging at the Washington State Office of Equity in the Office of the Governor. She is a licensed attorney and graduate of New York University School of Law, where she specialized in civil rights law. She earned her Certified Diversity Executive Certification in 2018. All right, with all that said, and without further ado, I will pass the mic to you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Talia. Thank you so much for the introduction and all of that helpful information and supporting accessibility. So let us just share our screen really quickly so that we can jump right in. Welcome to all who took time out of their day to attend this session. As you know, it is about, the title of this session is Laying the Foundation Towards a Pro-Equity, Anti-Racism, or PEAR, ecosystem. And we have already gotten our introductions out of the way, so let's jump into the agenda for today. We really want to start off with the kind of the theme of the whole conference and really show you how the Office of Equity is working with others to make results happen. So results happen together. That's what we'll cover first. And then we're going to talk to you about how we did it, how we do this work. And then hopefully we are able to have some question and answer time at the end. So the key learning objectives for today is to provide strategies and tools for building the required relationships with community and employees to apply an equity lens in all aspects of agency decision making. The second learning objective is understanding the framework for pro-equity anti-racism, PEAR framework, and provide strategies and tools for creating a PEAR ecosystem in Washington State. So results happen together, as the conference is the theme for this year. And how we have really done that is through the Governor's Executive Order 2204. So we really want to talk to you about our progress to date. What have been the results that have happened together? So actually, I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Megan Matthews, to share about the results that we have had in relational partnerships.
So thank you, Carolyn. Megan Matthews here. We're just really excited to see the momentum and movement happening across Washington State. And right now we're talking about how do we become more relational, right? We tend to be in state government very transactional. I meet with you, you give me what I need, I give you what I need, and we go about our business. And what we're trying to transition to something is more, where we're more connected. We're invested in each other and the outcomes, because we believe that's when better work and more quality work and equity and justice can occur. So on this slide is just some examples of language that we're hearing that's related to relational partnership. Very excited. And so I've been in meetings and spaces and I'm hearing words and terms that show and demonstrate that Washington State together is moving towards working relationally with others. The HEAL Act, they are working collaboratively with community to address issues. DSHS, their subcabinet for intergenerational poverty, is working on co-governance. The Department of Commerce is shared decision-making, beautiful. And in DSHS, their employee resource group is working on sharing power with employees. So the leadership is working with shared power with employees in the employee resource group. It's beautiful. And there are several other examples on here. I also want to call attention to that Washington State is not doing this in isolation. We are right in step with what the federal government is doing. So when we're talking about this shift, it's something that in the United States we recognize needs to happen. And the federal government is saying that they need to recommit to being of the people, by the people, and for the people to solve the complex 21st century challenges our nation faces. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Yes, so
Hand it back to my colleague, Carolyn Cole.
thanks, Megan. So I am actually going to just share a little bit more information of where we are across the government, state government enterprise for Executive Order 2204 as it relates to the creation of pro-equity, anti-racism teams, which is actually one of the requirements in that executive order. So the Office of Equity actually received initial contact information for 72 PEAR teams as of the date as we submitted this presentation to Results Washington. 812, that's 812 total PEAR team members, which actually includes agency executive leaders at the very top level, directors, secretaries, as well as their cabinets, agency equity officers, employees, external customers, partners, and experts. 100% of executive cabinet agencies did submit PEAR team contact information, and approximately 74% of small cabinet agencies submitted PEAR team contact information. In this number, there were 25 additional agencies, boards, commissions, and organizations, and those who actually opted in. They were not required under Executive Order 2204 to implement it, but they opted in to implement. And that included 3 elected offices, the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Office of the Insurance Commissioner, and Office of the State Treasurer, and 1 institution of higher education, which was Eastern Washington University. So thank you so much to those folks who have opted in. That just shows that you have a strong commitment to building pro-equity, anti-racism ecosystem in Washington State. PEAR team orientation sessions. These are sessions that the Office of Equity actually organized and held. And we did 20 live PEAR team orientation sessions for the enterprise. And so 607 people, or approximately 74% of the total PEAR team members that the contact information they had submitted to us, they attended those live sessions. And that included employees as well as community members. Community members were present at the PEAR team orientation sessions. And as of the date of this presentation slide deck, there were 314 views of the recorded PEAR team orientation session that we posted on YouTube. And for consultations for Executive Order 2204, Office of Equity has responded to over 310 inquiries that have been sent to the PEAR inbox. And those included requests for one-on-one consultations as well. And if you have followed Executive Order 2204 and all of the deadlines, we actually did have a deadline that came recently for PEAR teams to submit their PEAR strategic action plans. As of October 6th, noon, 48 PEAR strategic action plans were submitted. And I just want to take a moment to shout out Washington State Department of Veteran Affairs. They submitted the very first PEAR strategic action plan, and that was early on August 19th of this year. So thank you so much for your leadership, our Department of Veteran Affairs. And so what are some examples in that PEAR strategic action plan that were of those plans that were submitted and those plans that are being currently implemented? So a couple examples here in the area of the leadership operations and services. What we saw as a couple priorities is 1, relational partnerships, 2, communication services access. Some of the investments that agencies are focusing on is adding external customers, stakeholders, community members as PEAR team members, That's what they'll be working on over the course of the year. And also focusing on investments that create accessible materials, for example, for formerly incarcerated individuals who are seeking reentry services. So that is particular to one of the Washington State Department of Veteran Affairs programs for veterans who are formerly incarcerated. They will be working on communication services access. Another area is workforce equity. We saw investments around equity in jobs and job training, which is actually a pro-equity anti-racism determinant of equity. And they will be requiring all hiring managers and those involved with screening to attend bias training. That is an investment they will be working on over the course of the next year. So results happen together. What we heard from PEAR team members on this slide, and I believe the slide deck has been provided to you, are just a couple of quotes, one from an external partner or community member, and from a state employee who are on PEAR teams, and just showcasing the impact of what being involved in a PEAR team and implementation of Executive Order 2204, the impact it has had on them. And then on this slide, at your leisure, please feel free to take a look at some of the Washington State Agency websites that are dedicated and have been built as a result of Executive Order 2204, showcasing the work that is being done and commitment to the pro-equity anti-racism ecosystem mission. And highlighted here, Department of Social and Health Services, Washington State Patrol, Puget Sound Partnership, Board of Accountancy, Office of the Correction Ombuds, and Utilities and Transportation Commission. Highly recommend you all check out their websites. So let's get into the how we do it. How we do it. How did we do all this related to Executive Order 2204? And what is the Office of Equity doing to ensure that we are building a pro-equity anti-racism ecosystem?
And I just want to say, Carolyn Cole, this is Megan Matthews, that now you got Montel Jordan up in my head. This is how we do it.
Yes. Yes, we were told not to use any copyrighted music or anything like that, which it is. But yes, if you could play it in your head, that's exactly what we want. The Montel Jordan song. This is how we do it. So the PEAR ecosystem really is a change management model, and that's why it's so exciting to be at the Lean conference, because everything about this PEAR ecosystem is about change management, and that's what Office of Equity is doing for the state of Washington. And our starting point has been the governor's executive order. So in this change management model, community is the guiding light. It is an interconnected system of PEAR values, PEAR service lines, and PEAR determinants of equity. So for example, the PEAR values being access, justice, Ubuntu, love, equity, dignity, and belonging. And then for folks who maybe aren't familiar with Ubuntu, it is a Nguni Bantu word that basically is like, I am because we are interconnected. And that really what impacts me impacts everyone else and vice versa. And so that's the heart of the values of this model. The outcomes for this change management model is all people in Washington flourish and achieve their full potential, embody pro-equity anti-racism values, and enjoy peace, prosperity, and possibility now and for generations to come. And again, how we're laying the foundation. Again, the title of our presentation is Executive Order 2204, implementing the PEAR plan and playbook. So passing it off to Megan. Take it away, Megan.
Thank you, Carolyn. And I might have missed it at the beginning, but I did want to share that Dr. J shares her regards. She is out, we're splitting efforts with the small office to accomplish work. But she just wants to let you all know that she was thinking about you and she's excited for this conference. We're talking about laying the foundation, right? So at the core of what we do is what needs to change. So this is hard work. We're not talking about quick fixes or band-aids, but we're really talking addressing root causes of issues. so that we can have a better and more just and equitable future for all Washingtonians. And so when we want to level set and define some terms. And the term we want to define here is anti-racism. What do we mean by anti-racism? So we believe that in our very structures, our systems of oppression and racism. And so if you are being anti-racist, it requires you to take action. It requires you to do something, because the system is set up to where if you do nothing, it will continue to operate as it was designed to do. So if you are helping us to advance an equitable and just future for all, that is going to require you to take steps to challenge, combat racist policies and oppressive policies, right? It's going to require you to do something. And I can't tell you what that is, because each of you has unique skills, strengths, and abilities. And so you need to tap into those to figure out how you're going to help us advance the future for all Washingtonians. Thank you. Next slide, please. And so moving into relational partnership, what is that? Relational partnership is the foundation for the PEAR work. And it's really the only way, I believe, and we believe, the only way that we can create a pro-equity, anti-racism ecosystem. None of us knows how to do this on our own. We know through the limitations of being human beings that no one can really do anything on their own. If government knew enough to be successful in the work that we were doing, we would have done it already, right? So this isn't a matter of intent. We need the expertise of those in our communities to end racist practices and systems and realize justice and disparities and achieve equity. The Office of Equity is doing already just that. We're partnering with state and community to create a universal access and belonging plan. We're also partnering with a project team that's nearing wrap up at this stage of state and community members to develop guidelines for paying community members who provide their lived experience on state work groups. We're really excited about that. And as we go through this project where we have state and community members on them, we're paying those community members for their participation in the project. We practice what we preach. Next slide, please. So our call, what we're asking is to give back to our frame of mind. And maybe for some of you who never lost it, just tap back into that curiosity. For those of you who had the privilege of having a childhood where you could be curious and imagine and make believe and all of that, we want to tap back into that. When I was a kid, I used to watch I don't know what their official name is, but we call them potato bugs. And we would sit there and watch them, and we'd make them roll back up and then wait until they unrolled again. It felt like a long time we were doing that. But that's the state we want you to get back to reimagine state government. The idea that state employees and state agencies are just implementors maybe served a purpose in the past, but we cannot continue to just implement. We really have to be a part of and be active in creating the government that we want to achieve. So we're going to ask you to reimagine state government by implementing a pro-equity, anti-racism ecosystem framework through relational partnership. Next slide, please. Sovereign nations. So we do want to call out that when we talk about relational partnership, it's a separate relationship from the government to government relationship, because tribal governments have inherent sovereignty to govern their own people and their own lands. And we do want to say that state agencies, when you're interacting with tribal governments, you can use more relational partnership when you're working with them to build relationships and achieve better outcomes. But what we're talking about here today is people interacting with state government, not governments interacting with state government. Next slide, please. So our definition, our working definition is empathy-centered collaboration between government and people groups, especially those people groups who have been excluded and marginalized by government decisions and actions, so that we can undo harm and advance pro-equity, anti-racism outcomes. So we're putting the people back in public service. The humanity is at the center of what we do. We're talking about human-centered design. That really starts at empathy and the connection between of human beings to really accomplish the work that we're trying to do. Next slide, please. So relational partnership is all about relationships. Now, folks might ask, well, how do we develop these relationships? And I'm kind of going to flip that back to you and say, think about the relationships that you have in your life. I'm talking about family, friends. Though when I talk about family, I am talking about the family that you get along with, the ones that you probably invited to your summer barbecue, colleagues, neighbors, professional contacts. How did those relationships begin? How did they grow? How long did they take to develop? What values or foundation were they established upon? In this world, nothing gets done without relationships, without network. And I'm sure I'm telling you, any of you on this call, nothing new. Any of the 800 folks on this call, nothing new. Think about the accomplishments you've had, the jobs you've had, the changes you made occur. Can you find even one, if you were thinking honestly, that did not involve another person at some point? Even guidance, even a phone called event? Someone showed up to wait in line with you for something? Did anything ever occur without another individual? So the answer hopefully is no. And I'm excited to hear the example that is a genuine example that doesn't occur with someone else. So what we're asking government to do is not really something new, because we know we have relationships as individuals. We're bringing that into state government. It's not impossible. Agencies have existing relationships with external partners already, other agencies, folks in the media, other states, consultants. So we're requiring agencies to invite community into relationship. Next slide, please. Now, the SPICE model is important to forming relational partnership because it describes the necessary components of community interaction to build and sustain trust and thus relationships. It's the way you demonstrate you value relationship with community. You must intentionally do all 5 for holistic community interaction. SPICE is the how-to to relational partnership. So the seek, it's not passive. Nothing in this work is passive. Going back to our definition of anti-racism, seek is active. We need to seek out our community instead of making them somehow navigate our complex processes and systems to have a voice. So the P is for partner, working in relational partnership, shared decision making. In the disability community, they started the mantra, nothing about us without us, right? Inform, we're keeping everyone informed, we're being transparent. C is for connect or collaborate. Everyone has a perspective that will benefit the work that we're doing. So when you're collaborating, you're working together to create things. If you're at the stage of connecting, you're just making contact to build or strengthen relationships. And we know that government agencies are at different places. Some don't have an extensive community network, so they're just connecting with folks. Others already do, and you're at the stage of collaboration. The E is for engage, interact with others through activities, events to receive feedback or exchange information. Next slide, please. So a few slides ago, I asked about the relationships in your life, how they began and how they grew. I asked because those are going to be the reference points for you in relationship building with community. Because there is no checklist. There is no step-by-step process for building relationships with others. There are folks who have advice and tips and self-help books and things like that, but each community is unique. And because communities are not a monolith, each relationship is unique. What we're talking about is what Dr. Joy DeGruy, who wrote traumatic slave syndrome says is heart work. This isn't about intelligence or formulas or logic models. This is about heart, feeling, empathy, and love. Relationships are messy, right? It's true. So in the project team that we're working on to develop the guidelines for compensating community members, we've navigated some of that messiness. We've intentionally focused on building relationships. A significant portion of our meetings is devoted to getting to know each other and building connections. Why? Because as I'm sure you've concluded as well, relationships take time to build. Typically in state meetings, we quickly go through introductions, maybe 10 minutes or less, and then we get to business. That works if you already have relationships established, but it's not going to be conducive to building new relationships. When you are connected with someone, you care for them, you want what's best for them. You will give them the benefit of the doubt. You will have honest conversations and you will compromise to make sure the necessary outcome occurs. In our meetings, we've spent 30 minutes at least doing relationship building at the beginning. Dr. DeGroot also succinctly says, we blame it on the people and it's almost always the system. So for those of you in government, think about that statement. When have you interacted with someone and realized that our agency or state rules or process created a barrier for that individual? Our systems were established to serve people based upon an idea that our communities can't be trusted. So we have all kinds of rules and regulations and criteria to prevent people from cheating. Those really create barriers for folks who are actually in need of services, who are in painful and traumatizing spaces in their lives. And all they do is further dehumanize them. They're made to feel judged under the weight of our systems. We can't make the changes that we need to make without inviting them into these processes to help us find those gaps and barriers and problems to remove them. Next slide, please. Okay, so analogies. For those of you who are familiar with sports, and I'm gonna go through this a little bit quickly so we can move on in our agenda. So this analogy will make sense for those of you who are familiar with sports. Plays are strategies to score points or defend against points. These next slides provide the strategies for establishing relational partnerships. Next slide, please. First play, identify your biases. So based on brain science, we know we all have biases in our thinking. These are due to the automatic brain processes that form shortcuts to help us filter and process information quicker and efficiently. Without them, we probably wouldn't be able to get through the amount of information our senses receive each day. So this is not a good or bad thing, it just is, right? Hopefully there's not a lot of debate about this at this point. We all have biases. So you need to identify yours because those could form barriers to interacting with community and other individuals. Next slide, please. The second play is understand agency culture. Where are the written and unspoken components of your agency culture? What are the things that we don't necessarily have on written policy or in a training, but they absolutely impact someone's ability to navigate our systems, employees and community members. I think back about, if it may not be applicable, but I'm thinking about Renee Smith, who used to work for Results Washington in Washington State, and she had hosted human-centered design workshops. She would say, instead of focusing on policies, processes, and systems, what would happen is if state agencies focused on people? How would things be different if we put people first? And she was normalizing the terminology of love in state government. And for those of you who are leaders, what do you need to do or say to clear the way for transformation towards relational culture instead of assimilation for community? Next slide, please. So the third play is build your PEAR team. Carolyn's going to cover this a little bit later. So I just wanted to show where this falls in this model. Next slide, please. The fourth play is grow your relationships. If you've ever had a broken relationship that you wanted to heal, you know that you needed to do something to mend and reconcile, right? So there was some listening, apologizing, maybe you had to buy something or do something outside of that. So when we talk about, excuse me, when we talk about truth, healing, and reconciliation, this is what it means. We need to mend the relationships with our community. People representing government must listen to how we have been a part of harming people and take whatever steps are necessary to reconcile those relationships. Next slide, please. The fifth play is set the environment. I really want to focus on that first bullet. So this is about creating a supportive and collaborative environment. How will you focus on people, not policy and process? Now, when I say that, because I said that earlier too, I don't mean we just get to throw out the rules. Woohoo! No rules, yay! No. We're a state entity in Washington State that's accountable to the people and federal government. And sometimes funding is dependent upon meeting expectations. What I mean, though, is that our priority shouldn't be the rules where we lose the intent. It should be the people we have been signed up to serve. So when we're thinking about why it is that we do things, keep your mind on why, because people don't fit. Like, none of us fit into these little boxes. We're messy, you messy, I'm messy, we all messy, okay? So none of us fit into little boxes. When we create policy, procedures, legislation, we're creating it as if people fit into neat little categories. And what happens when someone doesn't fit? They fall through the cracks. So if we remember that why it is we're doing, why is it that we're creating this policy? Why is it that we're creating this legislation? Why is it that we're creating these procedures? If we remember the why behind it, then we can adapt, we can be adaptable when somebody comes in who doesn't fit neatly in the little box we've created. And center community. So if we could do this without community, we would have already, right? Like I said before, this isn't a lack of intent. I'm assuming that all of us got into public work, and those of you who are in public service, because you wanted to serve. But it's about lack of perspective. We don't have the perspective to solve their problems. And so the only way that we can get there is by centering community. Next slide, please. The sixth play is educate yourself. So as a group, whatever work group you're coming together with, as you form work groups, we're talking about PEAR here. So as PEAR teams come together, they were going to read Executive Order 2204, the PEAR team best practices and FAQs, and the PEAR one-pager. Whatever work groups you go to create, make sure you center everyone with the same information. Read the laws, policies, procedures that are applicable, so everyone has the same grounding and can move forward together. Next slide, please. Seventh play is use spice. So remember, let's throw some spice on let's throw some flavor on your community interaction, right? It's a joke, but seriously, make sure that you're hitting all the components of community interaction so that community feels like you're building a genuine relationship with them. I included a chart. It's just a basic chart. You can do something more fancy if you want. So that we're doing this intentionally, because the days of just in state government, just doing things need to be behind us. We need to be intentional so that we can make sure we can evaluate what we're doing and make changes where necessary. So this chart just captures current state. So go through it. What's your current state? What's your vision for how you seek people? What's the current state for the activities that you're doing and the outcomes that you're seeing? And then think about the future state. What do you want it to look like? How will you seek out people? What's your vision for seeking out folks and partnering with folks and informing folks and connecting with folks? And then that gap, what do you need to do to get from current state to future state? Next slide, please. So where's your agency? We're not all at the same place, and that's okay, right? So we've created some models that can help you identify where you are and help you begin moving forward with the rest of us. Next slide, please. So this is the relational partnership maturation model. No matter where you are in your community interaction, PEAR brings you to relational partnership. So no matter where you are, identify where it is you are, and now you know the components you need to move through to get to relational partnership. Next slide, please. And this is a text-only version for accessibility. Next slide, please. The relational partnership continuum. This is how agencies advance through the relational partnership maturation model. So with each of these steps, how do I get from strategic input to authentic engagement? You're conceptualizing the ideas. This session here, you want to learn about Executive Order 2204 and how we lay a foundation to advance equity and justice, right? So we're conceptualizing, we're taking trainings, we're learning, we're understanding. We're not necessarily doing anything, and people haven't really been impacted, but we're learning. Then you go to compliance. Now, okay, what are the things that I actually have to do? Then assimilation. Okay, how do I incorporate this idea into what it is I'm already doing? And then transformation. Okay, how do I change our processes to really, truly, and genuinely do the thing? Next slide, please. And then these next two slides are text-only versions. And then the relational partnership wrap-up. So relational partnership is the building block for PEAR teams. It's the foundation for success. Relationships take time, energy, and work. If you don't invest in them, they will die. There's no checklist. Please make sure you build your plays. Remember SPICE and give yourself grace. This is a journey, continuous improvement, right? We're all on this journey together. And with that, I will pass it back to my coworker, Carolyn Cole. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Megan. So let's get into the strategies for Executive Order 2204, because that is how we're laying the foundation at Office of Equity. And so really it's easy as 1, 2, 3. First, it requires establishing a complete PEAR team. Second, completing an initial baseline equity impact review. And then third, completing the PEAR strategic action template. So just a note, these steps can be followed by really any organization, not just state agencies implementing Executive Order 2204. And also a note, we will be changing EIR to Equity Impact Assessment, EIA, moving forward. That change will be reflected in the future in all of our materials. So preliminary draft documents for that's needed for PEAR plan and playbook, those were already shared with agencies to help them actually complete a PEAR strategic action plan and submit it. But we are still finalizing the final versions. Those materials will be made available to the public on our Equity Hub website, which is currently being built out. And we are tentatively hoping to have that completed before the end of the year. So just a note, the PEAR plan and playbook materials, the final public versions, you will find them on our website, and that's currently in progress. All right, so step one, Megan did a great job talking about relational partnerships. Those truly are the core of the pro-equity anti-racism ecosystem. And they are necessary, and really the PEAR team itself is a way to build relational partnerships. So in Executive Order 2204, it clearly lays out, as you'll see on the left here, symbolized by the blue circle, the PEAR team must include agency executive leaders, the agency equity officer, employees, external customers, partners, and experts for key business lines. So that is the required representation for a PEAR team if you're to build a PEAR team. And this is on purpose. Community members should be in direct communication with executive leaders, with employees. They should not be separated from or in a different hierarchy. They should be together, co-creating, and equal partners in decision making. If you'd like to have a broader group of folks that you'd like to engage with, we certainly encourage you to create a PEAR team advisory group. So that is a broader group of impacted employees, community members, interested parties, partners from the public, private, and academic sectors. And their role is really to advise that PEAR team in their decision making. So this is the guidance that we provided to agencies on how to establish their PEAR team. Step two, well, actually, let me go back one more second and just add, there were questions about how to identify and invite members to the PEAR team. So just a few tips: utilize existing relationships that employees and community organizations might have. It's really important to work with trusted, credible messengers in the community. Utilize community engagement managers, coordinators, or offices, which maybe is not a resource to all, but if you have them, you should leverage them. Contact your constituent relations or customer services offices and see what type of feedback, concerns, or comments you already received from community members. Often they have already tried to reach out to us, but there has been no response and no way to actually loop back with them about their feedback and get them engaged in decision-making and creating solutions. The PEAR team would be a perfect place to invite folks who've already tried to reach out to create solutions together. Those are just some initial, it's not an exhaustive list, but that has helped some agencies really begin to do outreach to invite community members to their PEAR team. So the second step, really under the Executive Order 2204, is to complete the initial baseline equity impact review. And in the Executive Order, agencies are required to partner with individuals, groups, and communities, right, on their PEAR teams that are impacted by agency programs or services to complete the initial EIR to determine baseline. So the PEAR team really already includes community member voice, employee voice of folks who have been historically and are currently institutionally oppressed and marginalized. Because there's no way to actually understand what the equity impact is if we don't actually have folks with lived experience helping us with the equity impact review. And so as part of the equity impact review, you're using as much existing data as possible. Maybe your organization's already done a climate assessment or disparity study, but you're also diving in deeper. The equity impact review worksheet that we provided to state agencies is pretty comprehensive, and it's a 5-step process. They're identifying disparities in areas where the needs of communities, employees, and other interested parties are the greatest. After really analyzing that, understanding the root causes, they are co-creating at least three investments that they could be working on to address those root causes of disparities and eliminate those disparities. And that is what the end result of that equity impact review is after they have gone through the 5-step process together. So I know we are running a little bit behind on time, so I will not be doing all 3 examples in today's slides, but I do want to walk through one example of how agencies could go from that equity impact review to identifying what the issues are and their findings, and proposing a PEAR service line investment, an area of one of their service lines, the 11 that we've identified for the PEAR ecosystem, where they can make a real investment in resources, time, and effort to eliminate a disparity and address a root cause in areas where the needs are greatest. So an example of this could be when an agency finds, after doing their EIR, that historically impacted communities have not been engaged with and included in decision-making, and really they're in the compliance stage of a relational partnership continuum that Megan discussed earlier. And so how do we get to the proposed PEAR service line investment of potentially creating a dedicated position required for PEAR teams, such as an equity officer, if the agency does not have an equity officer already, or a tribal liaison if they don't have one already, creating that position so that they can ensure they have complete PEAR team representation. So very quickly, I'm going to get off the slide deck and go to just an example of it that you will find in the PEAR plan and playbook when the final public version is published. I'm sorry for the scrolling here. You will just go to the PEAR service line related to leadership, operations, and services, because this is related to the agency's leadership, operations, and services. They have found that they have not been engaging and including community in decision making. So then we look to see, well, we want to be in line with the PEAR plan and playbook. What are the priorities under the specific PEAR service line of leadership, operations, and services? Well, really, it is about relational partnerships. And so in the first, and actually, can someone confirm that they see my handout that I'm referencing? I just want to make sure the slide deck isn't still showing.
We can see it. Thank you.
Awesome. So really, the first priority under this service line shows up pretty quickly. It's relational partnerships, and that absolutely applies to this specific finding. We want empathy-centered collaboration between government and people groups who have been excluded, so that we can advance pro-equity, anti-racism outcomes, undo harm, right? And then if you just go further down, the service lines are actually organized by investments underneath all of those priorities. There lists a lot of different possible investments that an agency can look at and choose to include in their PEAR strategic action plan. So scrolling down a little bit more, one of the investments is really to just invest in your PEAR team, in which case this particular agency in the example wants to follow Executive Order 2204 and ensure they have an equity officer to fulfill the requirement. They want to make sure they actually have a tribal liaison, right, to fulfill the requirements for a complete PEAR team. So as you can see, and this is going to be exciting when we have the final published version for everyone to use, this methodology provides a way for folks to really figure out what their investments could be by narrowing it down to which PEAR service line is most helpful to address the finding in your equity impact review. And then also align it with a priority area that the Office of Equity has already identified, and high priority investments that Office of Equity has already also identified. It's a good roadmap, a guide to start building a PEAR strategic action plan around to address findings in your equity impact reviews. So at your leisure, you can look at the, going back to the slide deck, another example of an EIR finding and how you can use the PEAR plan and playbook to create a PEAR service line investment. And then there's a third example here as well. Again, the tool is the PEAR plan and playbook to be able to create a PEAR service line investment that would be included in your strategic action plan. And we will have that publicly available for everyone. Let's see here. So the third step really is that PEAR strategic action plan template, which is also another tool that will be made publicly available as well. Based on the results of the EIR, agencies completed a PEAR strategic action plan template. And really, when you see the template, really what to expect is that they have completed a PEAR readiness checklist, or at least will be reporting their date of completion, to show that they have taken steps to institutionalize and show a commitment to pro-equity anti-racism, such as creating a policy around the Executive Order 2204. They will be identifying in the strategic action plan template, they have identified their top 3 PEAR service line priorities and investments, and the performance measures they will use to focus on in the next year to eliminate the disparities. And all the PEAR strategic action plans that we've received will also be made available on the website that is currently being built out. So everyone will get a chance to see what all the state agencies have submitted as their plans. They will also be tracking quarterly performance on these investment measures in another tool that we've created, which is the quarterly performance tracker. So there's a lot of good stuff in the pipeline that's going to be made available to all. Initial tools have been given to agencies for this launch year, and we have received already many strategic action plans. So just a recap for the PEAR plays for success in meeting the executive order requirements: establish your complete PEAR team, build relational partnerships, read the PEAR plan and playbook materials when available to all in their final version, and then complete the initial baseline equity impact review. And then it really is about completing the PEAR Strategic Action Plan template. Built into Executive Order 2204, because accountability is absolutely necessary in this change management model. Due September 1st of 2023, all agencies will be required to actually submit a pro-equity anti-racism annual performance report. And I think we're actually right on time now. So thank you so much. We have a PEAR inbox. It's PEAR at equity.wa.gov if you have questions. And then on this slide, we've provided links to Office of Equity and then Office of Governor Jay Inslee. And I think we can go to Q&A.
Ooh, thank you, thank you, thank you. That was an amazing presentation. I wish we had more time so I can tell you how all the great nuggets I got from it. But I'm going to jump over to these questions because we have a lot of questions in here actually. So first, can we ask Megan to explain the alphabet soup?
Yeah, I've been trying to respond to questions. And I had a question for that question. What alphabet soup? What does that mean? I don't know how we get the response that I don't know what alphabet soup means. So
Okay. All
sorry.
right. I'll move on to the next one. And the second one, I believe, is in reference to when you guys were talking about the PEAR strategic action plans. For those organizations that did not opt in, do they have the opportunity to do so? And is there a deadline? And what might be reasons why an organization does not opt in?
So can you see, because that's a question I responded to. I've been trying to respond because I know we couldn't get through them all.
Yeah, I was
That's
pulling
another-
some aside. So I
Yeah.
was pulling some aside because this thing
Yeah.
is getting really long. You guys have a lot of engagement.
I did respond to that in the chat. So
Let me start at the bottom then. How about that?
okay, perfect.
How do we get more buy-in from more resistant employees who say that the racial equity work is political and therefore believe that conversations around equity are not work appropriate?
Okay, well, we definitely would need more time to really unpack all of that. But I would just really say, you know, we really have to look at the reality of our impact. For us to deny that our impact has, you know, that any of us, our organizations have no impact along racial lines, ethnic lines, and other communities that have been historically and institutionally oppressed, that is a resistance to facing and admitting reality of our world and our impact. And I think that really is step one, just admitting that this is something that is real, that has caused harm, even if it's difficult to accept. We have to reach that stage of actually admitting that this happened. There's even folks who want to deny atrocities have occurred because maybe on some level, psychologically, it is difficult to actually accept that these traumas occurred. And I think we do need more work individually and collectively as a society to really address the history and accept that these are real harms that have occurred. I think that might be step one. I'll toss it to Megan if she has other thoughts.
So I think the easiest way I can say that is this is about not being appropriate work time discussions. And I would just say, my experience is not political. I'm not political. The fact that I exist is not political, and my experience has nothing. And just to say that, what is politics? It's policy. We're doing policy every day, right? As state, and this is how I speak, so I'm not yelling or anything like that. This is how I just speak. But we are involved in politics every day if we're developing policies and implementing and advancing policy. And then know that anyone who's talking about their experiences as a human being, that shouldn't be saying, oh, you can't talk about your experience because it's not work appropriate. If we're in public service, we are in the business of people, human beings, and all of that is appropriate. So the goal is to figure out how we do this in a way that dignifies everyone's humanity. And if you're interested in figuring out how we do that, you can come to Real Talk at 11 o'clock and figure out how we operationalize that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Well, in the interest of time, I'm going to close this out now. So thank you